Equipment, gear, loot. It's important to any adventure, to any fantasy. Frodo and his ring, your D&D party in that deck of many things they definitely need to stop relying on. My fetishes and jars of curdled milk. It's a fantasy tradition. And magic is no different. In the first set ever, we had artifacts that looked to depict classic fantasy tropes, from torture devices and ominous monoliths to mythical plants with powerful arcane properties, right through to sex toys for the brave. But whilst you, the player, you or me, the planeswalker, could wield these ancient artifacts and powerful pieces of ancient tech, you couldn't equip your creatures or your legendary heroes with them. As time tickled on, we had experiments in equipping creatures. Sword of the Chosen from Stronghold, it's a great example of this, an artifact that could activate to be wielded for the turn, to strengthen attacking and defensive stat lines of one of your troops. Everybody is scared of the Raging Goblin with a knife.
Let me see what you have! A knife! No!
But Sword of the Chosen kinda sucks. Well, kinda. I can't say it's truly terrible because being able to move it around every turn seems pretty decent, honestly. But then came along Mirrodin, and we got a whole new permanent type in equipment. Nemesis Mask. It turns your creature into a fucking unicorn. A unicorn! Equipment are artifacts you can attach to your favourite Raging Goblin and go to town. Raging Goblin in a beautiful cloak? I've got you, fam.
Yes!
Raging Goblin being a slag? Go off, king.
Yes!
Raging Goblin going to Halloween dressed as a Jawa from Star Wars? Yes!
Yes!
Or maybe he just carries a sword of fire and ice and your opponent's gonna have a really bad time. But there was one artifact in Darksteel more powerful than any other. Absolutely shit on all the rest. Better than Sword of Fire and Ice or Light and Shadow. Better than even a Bone Splitter, and that was Skullclamp. A little one-mana equipment that draws you all the cards and is now banned in Modern and Legacy, has become a staple in Commander. In today's video, I want to talk about how fucking cool equipment is. One of my favourite card types in Magic. It's also one of the most broken ones when you look at some of the bannings. I want to talk about some of the broken ones like Skullclamp, and one of the last-minute design changes that made this card go from good to fucking madness. Have they finally printed a fixed version of Skullclamp in Brothers War? All that and more in today's video. But first, it's dangerous to take on ham in your kitchen on your own, so take this. It's an ad. I'm gifting you an ad. It's an ad read, because I need to pay my mortgage. This video is brought to you by Kamikoto Knives. Premium, high-quality Japanese steel kitchen knives. You can upgrade your cooking and kitchen experience today with authentic, single-bevel steel knives. Or you can gift them to friends or family in this Swish display case and wooden box. To ensure the knife keeps its edge for longer, Kamikoto utilizes Japanese steel and the forging process refined over generations and drawn from traditional blacksmith methodology in Japan. They are as sharp as my wit, and as strong as my... You're probably wondering what I said there. Something wholesome like my willpower, or something lewd like my... I guess we'll never know. I've skimped in the past on kitchen knives and they've become dull as dishwater very quickly. Sometimes you just need a good blade so that you can cook and cut efficiently, like a cook. Use the code PLEASANT50 at checkout or the link in the description below to get 50% off your first purchase. Got 'em. That's PLEASANT50 or the link in the description to get 50% off your purchase. Auras. Not the subject of today's video, but we can stop to talk about how fucking shit they are for a moment. You draw your cool aura and you get excited. I'm going to turn this fucking creature into such a cool angel, you don't even know how cool an angel it's going to be. You tap your 4 mana, you cast your aura, targeting your lowly Raging Goblin, and then tragedy strikes. They kill the goblin, the destiny on the stack, and then the destiny goes to the bin. Looks like destiny is bullshit, Linda. And where are your horoscopes and your healing power crystals now, you bitch? But seriously, Linda, call me when you talk about Trevor. He won't stop playing stacks at his local game store, and I'm worried. Angelic Destiny is an interesting one because it actually has built-in 2-for-1 insurance on the card, so that if the carrier dies, you get it back, but not if the carrier, or the soon-to-be carrier's kill whilst on the stack. This is just one of many ways Wizards have tried to make auras feel less bad and limited and constructed over the years, making them cantrip, making them put counters on shit so they leave behind some value if they're destroyed, and making them fall off and become creatures if the target is killed on the stack, like with Bestow. Sure, fine, good, but are any of these good? Well, a handful of fine or fun, but honestly, outside of Boggle-style decks and Eternal formats, auras will often leave you feeling like your pants are around your ankles, just shitting into the wind if your opponent's paying attention. Shitting into the wind. Shitting into the wind? That is a turn of phrase, right? Equipments solve that issue, giving you a buff that can be applied, but if the creature is killed, you can have another member of your forces stroll along and pick it up. As my grandfather used to say in between screaming about foreigners, there's always another raging goblin. Alright Grandad, if I agree with you, will you stop voting for UKIP? So equipment are good, and they have their own archetypes where they see play in older formats, namely around a few linchpin engine cards. The first of which I want to talk about is Stoneforge Mystic decks in Legacy and Modern that allow you to cheat on costs. This means swords and battle skulls become very playable when they can't be countered because you're putting them in with an activated ability, can be tutored for from your deck for consistency, and they only cost you 2 mana. Come to think of it, it's kind of weird that we haven't had like a straight up Stoneforge Mystic kind of variant or reference that does this for auras. Battle Skull and Sword of Feast and Famine were the haymaker power plays of the Core Blade deck in Standard. A deck that got both Jace the Wallet Sculptor and Stoneforge Mystic banned in Standard. I know because I'd bought the event deck that they were in just before they got banned. So basically Wizards of the Coast printed like a watered down version of Core Blade into an event deck, and then they banned the cards out of Standard because they were ruining it and people just weren't playing anymore. And then to placate the people that bought the event deck, they did say to them, you can play Jace and Stoneforge in Standard as long as you play it in the 75 exact list from the event deck, which is an unplayable, watered-down pile. Good times. I just find that fascinating. Battle Skull still sees play, and it's an interesting one in terms of the lifetime of equipment. It ended up being one of the best, and almost the only playable of the living weapon mechanic. A mechanic that looked to push equipment to be even better than they already were by making them creatures when they entered, essentially, giving you not only the normal reusable buff, but having it equipped to a token upon entering the battlefield, which is wild. This made Battle Skull not only a equipment you could fetch and put into play with Stoneforge Mystic, but you could just slam it as a Sarah Angel style haymaker, trading flying for lifelink and shitting all over aggro decks, just blowing out its bowels like it had a particularly bad kebab last night. Living Weapon was exclusive to New Phyrexia and didn't rear its ugly head again until Modern Horizons 2, where we got another mythic with 1,000 bits of text on it that really pushed the mechanic to be powerful again. Sure, it's 7 mana and it's 7 to equip, but I'm sure whoever designed this was like, fuck it. They're just going to put it to play off Stoneforge anyway. Add some keywords, some sort of exiling effect. It's got indestructible, and oof, we got a Modern and Legacy staple going. It's so fucking good that many decks drop iconic and powerful cards like Fire and Ice and Battle Skull to make room for this huge beta threat. And I find it funny that it's a Caldro thing, as it's not only a power crept living weapon finisher that sometimes replaces Battle Skull, but it's also power creeps the original canonical reference, the rare cycle of Caldro items from Mirrodin block. They were equipment that were the 3 equipments in the set expansion symbols. Do you know that? I only found that out when Caldro Complete came around, that the original expansion symbols from Mirrodin, Darksteel and Fifth Dawn were each of the 3 parts of the Caldro set. I find that very interesting. I hope you do too. Before we move on for Stoneforge though, I do want to talk about another part of that archetype, the Umezawa's Jitte, another favourite magic card of mine alongside Fire and Ice. I just really like equipment, alright? Jitte is interesting because not only is it one of the handful of actually long-term, eternally playable Kamigawa block cards, because most of the cards in that block were pretty bad, but it also has something in common with Skullclamp in terms of design. Do you know what though? Well, yes, it's an artifact, but beyond that. And yes, it's an equipment, but beyond that. Yes. You have to be pretty brave to stick either of these things up your shit pipe. But that wasn't what I was referring to, comment section. It's actually about last minute changes. Originally, Jitte was going to be that it created 2 black mana as its black aligned ability. But then they realised after design and finish, and they were going into templating and making sure things work within the rules of the game, that, well, having an activated modal ability that then produced mana was weird in terms of timing. This is all explained in an article in the Mothership. So they instead last minute changed the black aligned ability to be the -1/-1 effect we have now. Bob's your uncle. We now have an incredibly powerful, broken, pretty much one of the best equipments ever printed. Some people want this unbanned in Modern, but as someone who likes to play creature decks and already feels bad about how bad Fury can be, I don't want to have some sort of Jitte off where then someone Furies me as well. Fuck that. Moral of the story is do not change things late in development and not test it. That's some foreshadowing. Beyond Stoneforge, there are of course the hammer decks in Modern, where you can use things like Sigada's Aid and Pure Steel Paladin to allow you to equip colossal hammers for free, and sometimes at instant speed, just to slap people for a whole bunch, slap them into oblivion. Sadly, not a Raging Goblin in sight, but I do love that it's effectively a meme at first. People thought the Colossal Hammer was going to be a joke, but it went on to be one of the best decks in the format, one of the top decks, should I say. And all of this is reminiscent of another powerful equipment if we go back to Mirrodin, in cranial plating, which has seen a ton of play over the years in affinity decks, artifact matters decks, where you would be able to shit out a ton of artifacts and then get into the red zone, sometimes equipping into an Inkmoth Nexus and just ending entire careers prematurely.
So basically, what I was thinking of was, oh fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
The last examples of equipment I want to run by before we get back to talking about Skullclamp is two absolutely fucking nutty cards that have come out in the last couple of years. Firstly, a quick shout out to the equipment of Splinter to him, Embercleave. Many a game of Magic has ended with your opponent having Embercleave in hand at the right time and you not having the correct way to deal with it. Whoopsie, I guess I'll die. Embercleave is an interesting footnote in the history of equipments because, well, it doesn't really require you to be an artifact or equipment-centric deck. It doesn't require Stoneforge or Cigar de Zeta or any of that shit either. It's just an equipment that cares about you turning shit sideways, whether that be Raging Goblins or red and green creatures, who cares? Just attack them and then we can just smash someone and fucking kill an innocent person, cleave them, go on, fuck them up, son. The other big new addition is Sunspear. I say new, I think Theos Beyond Death came out. It's before the pandemic, so it's 10 years ago? No, was it during the pandemic? I don't know. Time means nothing. It's a wild little equipment, does a million things. It grows your creature, it stabilizes with lifelink, it gives it evasion with trample, and there's got some extra text on it as well, where it's able to stop indestructible or hexproof on your opponent's creatures. Ironically, probably only coming up when there's a fight that involves a Caldro in Modern. A wild Magic card. But what pushed this already very powerful card and cheaply costed equipment to be a staple in older formats is, well, yeah, you guessed it. It's another Modern Horizons 2 card. Urza's Saga allows you to grab specifically 0 cost and 1 cost artifacts, and it would be grabbing plating if it wasn't banned in every format. And with producing bodies that do the beating for you, Shadow Spear is often part of that toolbox. It's often the best thing to go and grab because it makes those beaters become life-gaining, stabilizing threats with evasion. I do love it when you have solved puzzles in my card game. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Anyway, so the Caldro weapons were the showy, like, splashy equipment of Mirrodin, but they were shown up by other equipment in the set. They paled in comparison to Swords of X and Y, to Cranial Plating, to Bone Splitter, really, and Aggro decks and similar, and of course, to Skullclamp. Clamp was banned in block constructed and standard, being an incredible way to draw cards, especially for once where sacking artifacts to a Ravager was the best use of your time, energy, and money. It also does a lot of the heavy lifting for you because you don't have to have a sack outlet. It also saw play in Goblins and Elves in Standard. If you've got a lowly Disciple of the Vault set around, or maybe a 1/1 Elf in your standard Tooth and Nail deck, and you want some gas, just equip this for 1 mana. The Skullclamp does the job for you. It will crush that poor creature's head like a melon in some weird fetish video. And suddenly you trade a 1/1 and 1 mana for 2 cards. That's a pretty good fucking rate. Drawing cards is good, by the way, even if you've got a bit of a hard-on for Raging Goblins. In development, the story goes that Skullclamp had +1/+1 on it, but the buff and the ability to block and draw cards was considered very good, perhaps too good. So late in development, an emergency change was made. Let's make it worse by having it debuff the back end of your creature. Oopsie doopsie, we did a whoopsie? Success! Instant fucking staple. So what is all this talk of fixing it? Well, allow me to introduce you to Transmogrant's Crown, a reference to the Transmogrants that Ashnod made as foot soldiers in the original Brothers War. We've seen them on 1 card before, a proto-equipment from Antiquities. That is where it's 1 mana, you sacrifice it, and you turn a creature into an artifact and give it a +1/+1 counter. All for 1 mana. What a powerful transformation. Thanks, Ashnod. But I find it fascinating that this is one of those proto-equipments. It's an artifact that did something to buff and change a creature. The new crown is a 2 mana artifact that gives +2 power, and when the creature dies, you draw a card. And it equips for either 2 mana or 1 black mana. It's significantly worse than Skullclamp in pretty much every scenario, especially Commander, as drawing 1 for 1 mana is a lot worse than drawing 2, especially it doesn't have the element of doing the heavy lifting for you. It won't just kill the creature with its debuff like Skullclamp does. The bit that makes Skullclamp actually much more broken than it should be. Perhaps in an aggro deck though, something in standard, mono black aggro, drawing cards or creatures and gaining 2 power might be a decent trade up. This card might see some play there. It's a classic callback not only to a story moment with the Transmogrants of Antiquities, but also alluding to a powerful artifact from Magic's past and how it functions. So not much different to Caldro in many ways, referencing a story beat and being evocative of a existing powerful staple. But ultimately it's not doing anything super special outside of that. I love the concept of mind control BDSM gear that turns people into cannon fodder. It's grim and it's provocative and it gets the people going, but it's of a middling power level. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, and I might equip it at some point. I hope you've enjoyed the video and this walk down memory lane, this look at equipment through the lens of jokes about Raging Goblins and sex toys. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Smash that bell, like, comment, subscribe, all that shit, And support me on Patreon as well. There's a link on Patreon down below if you want to help support me directly. Also, thank you to Kamikoto Knives for sponsoring this video. I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.